to Get Real with Asil, a woman empowerment podcast hosted by Asil Albaba. Hello and welcome to another episode of Get Real with Asil. Today is Monday, February 12th, 2018. Super excited to be recording this episode as I'm actually reading a new book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. It's a very, very famous book in the self-development field. The motto of this book is a story about living your dreams. And it's really, really interesting so far. I'm halfway through. But as you know about me, if you've listened to previous episodes, anytime I read anything that could add value to you while offering my own personal spin on it would be something I would share on this episode, just to empower you with tools to lead more inspiring, motivated lives. And this is ultimately my mission. Anytime you learn something yourself, I strongly encourage you to teach it to others. And this way, you're spreading the wisdom of the things you're learning, but you're also further ingraining it in your own brain. So I really believe in that so much so. It doesn't have to be a podcast that you have. It could be that you're teaching your friends, just sharing the lessons with them. It could be that you're writing blogs, or it could be you're painting or creating music, or even recipes of food. I don't really care the outlet that you use to share the teachings that you come across that are intriguing to you, as long as you're passing them on. And you can pass them on in whichever platform makes sense for you. So I just wanted to add this side note before I get into the material for today's podcast, because I truly believe in that. And it's very important that you live your life in a position where you're serving constantly, one way or another, while obviously fulfilling your passions along the way. Actually, one of the memes I created today, I'm not sure if you follow me on social media, but on my Instagram, sometimes I just make memes out of, pictures I have, and I infuse them with different quotations. And one of the quotes I shared today is that the purpose of life is a life of purpose. That's how it goes. And I truly, truly believe that. So think about that for a second, reflect on it. And if you feel that you're missing fulfillment and deep joy and deep motivation and inspiration in your life, that's because you're probably missing purpose. And when you find purpose, the rest of the ingredients you need to follow it through will appear in your life if you're consistently reminding yourself of that purpose. Because the purpose to be fulfilled, you obviously need to be inspired and motivated and just on top of your game. And you won't be that unless you have a clear understanding of what that purpose is. So without further ado, let me get into the book. So let me first of all read you I don't know what you call them, these things on the end of the book, which pretty much gives you a quick summary of what it's about. It's a note by the author. 10 years ago, a book was published that has since transformed millions of lives, sharing the stories of Julian Mantle, the superstar lawyer whose stunning material success masked deep emptiness within. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari was initially printed in a small quantity but quickly grew into a word-of-mouth sensation. Since then, the book's simplest yet remarkable powerful message of hope, inspiration, and authentic success has spread throughout the world. So this is really what this book is about, and this is so much in alignment with my podcast, because this is what I'm trying to achieve too. I'm trying to give you a message of hope, inspiration, and authentic success. That's why it's called Get Real. So what I will do is, first of all, I'm not gonna summarize the book, but I will summarize the essential key learnings out of it. So there's a story that the book starts with about 7 rituals or virtues to success. But the 7 virtues to success are pretty much summarized in a fable. And the fable, I'll share the fable with you in this episode, and then I'll get into the first virtue of success with you, and then I'll dedicate an episode for each of the following 6 afterwards. And this way I would have summarized at least the major takeaways of this book without necessarily getting into the rest of the fluff of it. The fluff is interesting too, but the point of this podcast is not to summarize the book itself. So the 7 virtues are summarized in this fable that like I said, and I'm gonna read it off the book. I actually had the page marked, and now I lost it, so I'm looking for it. Bear with me. Where did you go? It's okay, there it is. Okay, so the fable was the essence of it all. Okay, so it's the 7 virtues for a life overflowing with inner peace, joy, and wealth of spiritual gifts. And who doesn't want to learn about that? So let's read the story together. When was the last time anyone read a story to you? Actually, that's interesting. So imagine you're just sitting on your bed right now, and even if you're driving to work and it's just the beginning of your day, just go back to your childhood for a little bit and just remember these nights where you were in bed and your parents read a story to you, or your older siblings, or even you read a story to yourself. I always find these childhood memories so precious. So put yourself in that time zone right now and imagine that someone is reading a story for you just before sleep as a child. So you're sitting in the middle of a magnificent, lush, green garden. This garden is filled with the most spectacular flowers you have ever seen. The environment is supremely tranquil and silent. Savor the sensational delight of this garden and feel it as you have all the time in the world to enjoy the natural oasis. As you look around you, that in the center of this magical garden stands a towering red lighthouse, 6 stories high. Suddenly, the silence of the garden is disturbed by a loud creaking as the door of the base of the lighthouse opens. Out stumbles a 9-foot-tall, 100-pound Japanese sumo wrestler who casually wanders into the center of the garden. As the sumo wrestler starts to move around the garden, he finds a shiny gold stopwatch which someone had left behind many years earlier. He slips it on and falls to the ground with an enormous thud. The sumo wrestler is rendered unconscious and lies there silent and still. Just when you think he has taken his last breath, the wrestler awakens, perhaps stirred by the fragrance of some fresh yellow roses blooming nearby. Energized, the wrestler jumps and swiftly on his feet and intuitively looks to his left. He's startled by what he sees. Through the bushes, at the very edge of the garden, he observes a long, winding path covered by millions of sparkling diamonds. Something seems to instruct the wrestler to take the path, and to his credit, he does. The path leads him down the road to an everlasting joy and eternal bliss. Now, initially, this book, so the story ends here. This book, it starts by this very successful lawyer, pretty much selling all his materialistic obsessions over the years and going to a soul-searching journey in India. And this story was shared to him by one of the yogis that he ended up seeking, wisdom and a lot of life answer and soul searching questions from. And the yogi was telling him that this story that I just shared with you and I just read it has the 7 virtues for life overwhelmed in, inner peace and, eternal bliss and joy. So when the lawyer heard this story, he was pretty disappointed. He was like, what is this? I thought I'm going to be hearing some earth-shattering knowledge right here. What kind of story is that? And the yogi said to him, never overlook the power of simplicity. He's like, this story may not be sophisticated as you expect it to be, because when somebody tells you, I'm about to give you the story that pretty much symbolizes the virtues that you need to like achieve all the inner peace and happiness in your life, and then you hear a story like that, you're like, what is this? I didn't get it. Like, I don't understand what this thing is all about. But it turns out that every single element in the story is a symbol for something else. So there's 7 symbols in the story, which I will dedicate each episode for, because each of them has an expansion of wisdom within itself. And the symbols are as such: the garden, the lighthouse, the sumo wrestler, the pink wire cable, the stopwatch, the roses, and the winding path of diamonds. So they're all symbols of timeless virtues for an enlightened life. And I'm really, really excited to be delving into each one of them to share with you the takeaways out of each virtue and what it actually represents. So this episode, I'm just starting to introduce to you what my next 6 episodes would be about, but I'm also going to be starting with the first virtue, which is the garden. So the garden is where everything started, where you woke up and you found yourself in a beautiful, just very tranquil, very well orchestrated garden. Now, when we get into what the garden actually symbolizes, it actually symbolizes your mind. And before I get into the details of that, let me share a quote by William James, and it goes like that. Most people live, whether physically, intellectually, or morally, in a very restricted circle of their potential being. We all have reservoirs of life to draw upon which we do not dream. And I've shared with you before the importance of your mental mastery and your self-mastery, which obviously starts with your thoughts. And if you recall, I'm not sure if you've heard my episode last, I think it was in June, or May, because I had, when I went to the Bahamas last year and I did a yoga retreat. And for 1 week, I was learning about the power of positive thinking course. I took it there while I was there. And the interesting thing about this course is it revealed how in our mind on a daily basis, we have over 60,000 thoughts that come and go. And it's really, really crazy number to even imagine, but a lot of it happens in our subconsciousness, which is why this number is really hard to fathom. But the interesting thing about that reality is that over 95% of our thoughts are repeated day after day. So it's the same thoughts that we're really processing on a daily basis. And over 85% of them is negative. That is the shocking truth to how we are wired as humans. So understanding that and realizing that this is something that we need to actually hack in order to make a significant difference in our life, then that really puts things in perspective for us. So my goal is to understand exactly how we're operated, how we're wired, so that we understand how we can change it and how we can make it better and how we can master it. We are a piece of art, and we can master ourselves and ultimately bring the best version of ourselves to this world. And that's how we can leave a legacy that we're proud of. So I just wanted to share that insight with you, because this is ultimately what this whole thing is about, really giving you tools to help you with your self-mastery and empower you in any way I can. So in this fable I just shared, to go back to it, like I said, the garden is a symbol of the mind. So if you care for your mind, you're ultimately nurturing and cultivating everything you can in that garden. So visualize your mind as a garden. And when you have negative thoughts, these are the weeds that grow up in the garden. So ultimately, it's our responsibility to identify these weeds and just know how to get rid of them, so we can plant flowers and plant things that are useful and fruitful, instead of the weeds that really just take over and decrease the quality of our lives. So to live life to the fullest, we really must guard the gate of our gardens. Think about it this way. Excuse me. So the interesting thing about this specific book so far is that it's actually giving you practical techniques. It's not just fluffy stuff. It's not just, theoretical things. It's also breaking down simple techniques that you can start implementing in your life right away to start witnessing change. And I think when you start witnessing change, that's what gives you confidence in the techniques you're doing, and then ultimately even the theories that you're starting to introduce yourself to, and that gives you fuel to keep going. So I strongly encourage you, no matter how you feel about the material I share with you, whether you think it's just, a bunch of BS, or if you really take it to heart, wherever you lie on the spectrum and anywhere in between that, I strongly suggest you give it a shot. And only after you give it a shot for an elongated period of time, I would suggest a month, at least a month. And if you don't start seeing results within this month, then obviously you're either not fully committing to it, or you're just not fully understanding it and embracing it, because these are rituals that many people have implemented and they're seeing results in their lives. And I'm only sharing them with you because I also implement them myself, not wholeheartedly and not religiously as I should, because that's just my weakness as a human. I'm not as disciplined as I want to be, but I strive for it, and every day I try to get better at it. And reminding myself of it is also something that I should be doing and mastering as well. So let me get into it, and then we'll talk about each at a time. So the summary, which is the wisdom behind what that garden symbol is three things. Cultivating your mind, because it will blossom beyond your expectation. So you need to dedicate as much energy and attention and focus and intention to your mind and thoughts, because once you do so, the ultimate result of that is beyond any of your expectation. The second thing, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts. Many people speak about that. I don't even know who can even debate or disagree with that, because it just seems like absolute logic. The thought process that you go through, the thoughts that you think about, ultimately shape your reality. You are what you think about. It's just that simple. And the third takeaway is that there's no mistakes. There's only lessons. When we look back at our lives and we think about our pasts and we think about everything that happened to us, some people are just drenched with regret. They're living life in a way that's weighing them down, because they're holding on to the shame and the guilt of everything they've done in their past. But if they were to see setbacks as opportunities for self-growth and spiritual expansion, then it really just really makes a big difference. I spoke about that actually in my 7 takeaways for 2017, because that year I did a lot of self-discovery. I did a lot of spiritual growth for myself, and a lot of it was focused on the intentions of letting go of your past. Like, embrace the lesson you gathered out of whatever experience you're holding on, but letting go of the experience itself, letting go of the resentment, letting go of all the negativity, because these are the things that ultimately weigh you down. So these are the 3 takeaways that summarize the wisdom in a nutshell. But there's specific techniques that you have to start doing on a daily basis and in a consistent basis, so that you can actually start cultivating that wisdom in your life. Because what I just shared with you are ultimately the results. So when you master your mind, you will have that peace of mind, you'll have the tranquility you seek, you will have just that zen-like, present-like attitude, which ultimately gives you so much more energy and inspiration to go through by your day. But these are the techniques that were shared. So the title of these 3 techniques are The Heart of the Rose, Opposition Thinking, and The Secret of the Lake. So I'm going to start by The Heart of the Rose. I actually saw one of my Facebook friends post something about that not too long ago. So it was interesting for me to read it, because when I saw it on his wall, I thought it was an interesting concept. So the way it works is you actually bring your rose, okay, and you stare at the center of it. And when you're doing so, you are actually like focusing your energy and your mind into the center of something that is so beautiful. So the way the way it works and the best surroundings to have this specific ritual is in a quiet room. So maybe in your bedroom, or if you have like a specific area in your house where you dedicate for spiritual practices or whatever it may be. Stare at the center of the rose, like just stare at the heart of it. And the rose really is a good symbol to life in itself, because along the way there's thorns that may just come up which would test your faith and challenge you. But ultimately, if you just look beyond the thorns, you will ultimately reach the glory of the rose itself. So if you keep staring at the rose, start noticing its colors and texture and design, and just try to focus on the magnificent, magnificent thing in your hand. Savor its fragrance. Just take it all in and just keep staring at it, focusing on the little details that this rose embodies. And think only about this wonderful object in front of you. So whatever thoughts are coming into your mind, maybe things about work or your family or fights with your partner or whatever things are just, happening in your mind, bring your focus back to the rose that you're holding in your hand. So at first, these thoughts will start entering your mind. You're going to be distracted from the heart of the rose. But if you just mark, if you just keep getting these distracted thoughts, you realize that your mind is just not trained, and you're currently training it. So as long as you're noticing that these thoughts are coming to you, which are natural, this is really natural. I cannot stress to you enough how normal getting distracting thoughts are, especially when you're trying to focus on something very, very specific. But this is signs how untrained your mind is going to be. And that's interesting for you to start noticing, because you will notice your progress and your ultimate improvement when you start doing this ritual daily, and ultimately learn how to return your attention to the object in your hand, which is the rose in your mind. So soon your mind will grow strong and disciplined. So when you start off this ritual, you will have so many distracting thoughts. It'll be really hard for you to just hold that rose and stir for even for 5 minutes. It might seem like an hour. But if you keep doing it on a daily basis, and I do suggest that you pick a specific time and you stick to a specific ritual, because it's easier to discipline yourself when there's specific things you're adhering to on a daily basis. And if you try that for a whole month, you will start noticing that by the end of the month, it's much easier for you to reflect on that rose in front of you and to actually be lost in its beauty, versus getting all these distractions and these thoughts that wander around in your brain. So you're starting to master your brain in a way that you master what thoughts come to it, and these thoughts that are unwelcomed will no longer be distracting to you, because you are dedicating your attention to something mindful. So that is the first technique, which is called the heart of the rose. And I really thought that was interesting. Excuse me. The second one is the opposition thinking. The opposition thinking is really about being very mindful and aware of all the thoughts that come into your mind. And every single time you think of something negative, you replace it with a positive spin immediately, whatever the case may be. So if I had a frustrating day at work, which happens a lot. So let's say I had a frustrating, day where I met with many clients and, just things were not going well at all. So at the end of the day, instead of sitting on my couch, just thinking about how dreadful that day was and how things just didn't go according to the plan, I will start these specific thoughts start surfacing in my head, which they do, by the way. These are like real examples. I can start picking each of these thoughts and replacing it purposely with something positive and something, helpful. So maybe I will think about what I want to accomplish the next day, or maybe I want to think about how I want to go back to that specific client and turn things around for them. Or maybe I want to think about specific goals that I'm working towards overall in my business, or whatever the case may be. But if I was to identify what these thoughts are specifically and then put a positive spin on them, then this is called the opposition thinking. And this is a technique where you're simply filtering the thoughts in your mind and then replacing them with something more practical and more serving to you. And the last one is The Secret of the Lake. Now, it's just called The Secret of the Lake because the yogis where this lawyer was learning from would go to the lake and sit by the water and just visualize all the goals they want to be achieving. It's really just an exercise of visualization, which I've spoken with in my previous episodes as well, as I truly wholeheartedly believe in it. And it doesn't have to be that you do it by the lake. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the outdoors, but, depending on which country you live in, right now, as an example, I'm in Canada, I'm in Toronto, and the weather is ridiculously cold. So nature is really something that people would probably avoid at this time of the year, as it's really hard to enjoy it in extreme cold weather. But if you can just create that, haven for yourself in your own house, or wait until the spring and the fall and summer to explore the nature in every way you can. But as long as you're doing visualization on a daily basis, commit at least 10 minutes to that. I strongly believe in it. Just close your eyes and visualize everything you want to achieve in your life. And I'm not just talking about the big dreams and the big ambitions that you have. These are important things to always think about as well. But I'm also talking about the little things. Embrace those as well, because they're part of your day-to-day. So whether it's striving to be the best partner you can be, or the best sibling, or the best son or daughter or friend or coworker, or being in the best physical shape, or being in having that spiritual awakening. So whatever little goals you have along the way, and these are not little goals, by the way, but I'm talking about not just big milestones in your life that you think about, but also the day-to-day things that you strive to achieve and maintain are also things that are important to think about and visualize. So if you're single, for example, and you want to be in a happy, fulfilling, out of this world relationship, then that is part of your visualization. Imagine what that relationship looks like. Imagine the feelings that are overflowing in your life as a result of that relationship. Imagine the activities you and your partner are doing. Imagine whatever things make sense for you, that excite you when you think about what it's like to be in a relationship that means something to you. And when it comes to your career goals, if there's specific milestones that you want to achieve, if it's a career transition, if it's a lifestyle change, whatever the case may be, as long as you are dedicating at least 10 minutes in your day to visualize these goals, then this is the third technique provided to us by this book. So the Heart of the Rose, the opposition thinking, and the visualization tool that is offered. And this is ultimately what summarizes the garden, which is ultimately a symbol of our mind. So I hope that you found this episode helpful. I hope you're walking away with some techniques that you can start implementing in your life today, and stay authentic to who you are. And ultimately, who you are is ultimately something you're discovering more and more every and each single day. So this is a journey that will never end. It will be something that you're constantly mastering every single day, and it's just an exciting and joyful one, and at least you're trying your best to make it so. So with that, I look forward to future episodes where we can learn, grow, and most importantly, get real together. Take care, everybody.